You're watching Good Evening San Diego.
Okay, have you ever been looking for something that's right in front of you, literally right in front of you, but you don't see it, like maybe your keys? All right, well, listen to this. A new study from Salk Institute says it actually has something to do with something called traveling brain waves. And joining us now to talk a little bit more about it is the author of that study, one of the authors, Salk Institute professor John Reynolds. Professor, good to talk with you tonight.
Ginger, I'm happy to be with you.
Well, I appreciate this study so much because I've always just chalked it up to, old age or distraction. But apparently you're saying there's actually some science behind not seeing something that, may be right in front of your face.
Yeah, absolutely. So research in my laboratory focuses on how our eyes and our brain work together to let us see. And that is a really important area to look at because we can discover the way that the brain works in general by studying the way that the visual part of the brain works. And understanding the healthy brain is really key to understanding brain disorders like schizophrenia and Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, I definitely want to jump into that part of the study, but how'd you approach this study?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we recorded brain activity during a visual task with new computational methods that let us analyze that brain activity. The area that we were recording from had a complete map of the visual scene in front of you. And the task was just to detect a very faint stimulus when it appeared on a computer screen. And what we discovered was that the brain activity that we were recording is organized into traveling waves that propagate across the visual field about 10 times a second. And your ability to detect the target, to detect this faint stimulus, depended upon whether the waves were aligned with the stimulus or not.
Okay, so did things like age or, your visual ability, if you're 20/20 vision or not, did any of those have an impact on the brain's ability to register that?
We haven't looked at this as a function of age, but this study provides a whole new way of thinking about the way we see, and it's certainly something we'll be looking forward to understanding going forward.
Okay, so this is the key. The study is impressive by itself, but how does understanding these brain functions actually help us with diseases, understanding diseases like Alzheimer's and schizophrenia, like you brought up?
Thank you. Yes, the human brain is made up of about 100 billion neurons, and they're connected by about a trillion or more connections. So it's a very complicated thing to study. The way we can approach it is to break it into its parts. And in the visual system, there are about 35 different areas that work together to allow you to see. And so what we'll be looking at next is whether these waves are coordinated across these areas and how they allow communication to occur across those areas. And it's that communication that may be failing in diseases like schizophrenia and possibly also in Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, so if that's what you're looking at next, are you saying that if you can determine some relationship there, you could undo some of the effects of Alzheimer's or schizophrenia, or one or the other possibly?
Yes, that is a long-term goal. Obviously, this is basic research, and it's sort of the foundation that we'll build upon. But we will be looking at how these waves change with age and other things like cognitive dysfunction in Alzheimer's as we go forward.
So what kind of timeline does a study like this take?
This study in total took several years to complete. We had to develop a lot of the experimental techniques and a lot of the math.
Yeah,
so it's a huge effort, and the people who did the work, the two lead authors on who are postdocs in my lab and Terry Sinofsky's lab, just did a fantastic job.
Were there any other byproducts of studies? Because I know that's so common. You go in with basically, one scope, and then you find out something over here.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit technical, but one of the big questions that we're now looking at by building models of this is how these waves can propagate across the visual system without disrupting information processing. And that's another major new direction that's opened up by this research.
And then when you decide to study the teenage brain, I'll be really interested to hear about those findings. All right, Professor John Reynolds, great to talk with you. Great study. Enjoyed reading it. Look forward to see what's next.
Thank you, Ginger.
Thank you.